Ahoy Captains, it's Vaz again with another video from World of Warships Legends. And today we're doing another versus video for you. If you haven't seen one of my versus videos before, the premise is pretty simple. In versus, we compare two similar and readily available ships to determine if one is better than the other. We tally the points up as we go, and at the end we hope to determine a winner. We'll also throw in a little bit of information and some tips on the builds and playstyles of the ships. For this matchup, we have two Japanese Tier 7 battleships, the Amagi and the Key. First, we'll start off with a little bit of info on these ships. The Amagi is the tech tree ship in the game, and it was designed in 1919. While the Key was, and I guess it still is, the best possible prize in the Santa 2021 containers. But very recently, it's been made available to everyone for 750,000 global XP, and the ship was designed in 1921. A lot of people will describe the Key as an Amagi with torps, but that is actually very untrue. Yes, they are both high-speed battleships, or battle cruisers, but the Key was a development of the Amagi class and so saw a number of improvements in her design. If you check out the models in the game, you'll see quite a few similarities, but just as many differences. The conning towers and rear mast look really similar, so does the overall shape of the hulls and the turrets, but the smokestacks are completely different, and the secondary guns and the placements of the AA guns are also quite different as well. So we are actually comparing two very different ships here. Sort of like comparing an Iowa with an Alabama, for example. But is one of these ships actually better than the other? Let's find out. Before we get into the stats of these ships, let's talk about their playstyle and my recommended commander builds. In my view, these ships can be both played at medium to long range, but mostly at longer ranges. Their armor just isn't good enough to get caught out in the open. Remember, they're not really traditional battleships, so it's going to be tough to slug it out with other BBs that are better armored. Instead, I like to take advantage of their higher speed and try to position myself in such a way that I can get a crossfire going on some of the enemies. Therefore, for my commander, I recommend Takagi. I use my usual Cunningham in the first inspiration slot, and that's because these large 410mm guns can fire like a shotgun at times. And then for my second inspiration, I use Gibrete to boost that battlecruiser speed up I was just talking about. I choose all the usual high risk, high reward offensive skills like Flammable Cannoneer, Gyrating Drill Bits, Marksmanship, and Reaching Out XXL. And for the legendary skill, I choose the always handy Will to Rebuild. And lastly, just a little bit of advice here, when you're playing the Key, just go ahead and forget about its torps. Not only will you be blown out of the water before you get within torping range most of the time, especially at legendary tier, if you are somehow still alive and in range to use them, the torping angles on the launchers are absolutely terrible, and their damage isn't going to be worth throwing your ship away for. Trust me, play at range and think of these torps as emergency torps only. Next up, let's quickly run through all the upgrade slots. Both ships have 4 starting upgrade slots, while the Amagi has 3 unlockable slots. In slot 1, the options are Aiming Systems Mod 1, Secondary Battery Mod 2, AA Guns Mod 2, and Main Battery Mod 2. I usually choose and always recommend Aiming Systems Mod 1 on most ships, and especially for battleships. That dispersion of the main battery is very invaluable. In slot 2, your options are Steering Gears Mod 2, Propulsion Mod 2, or Damage Control System Mod 2. I would say it comes down to your personal playstyle, whether you choose between Steering Gears Mod 2 or Propulsion Mod 2. For me, I like to do Propulsion Mod because I like to get moving. But if you like an agile ship, you might want to choose Steering Gears instead. In slot 3, there are 2 options for these ships, and they are Concealment System Mod 1 and Target Acquisition System Mod 1. Now on the screen here, you can see that I've chosen the Target Acquisition mod for both ships, and I believe that's because I had chosen them before the Concealment System mod was actually added to the game. And this is actually a tough call here. I would probably experiment with Concealment System a little bit first before I give my recommendation. But honestly, if I were going to play these ships quite often, I'd probably choose it over Target Acquisition. Next up, we have slot 4. Now the choices in slot 4 are a little different. The Key does have the Torpedo Launchers Mod 3 as an option, but they both have Secondary Battery Mod 3, AA Guns Mod 3, and Main Battery Mod 3. For both ships, I recommend the Main Battery mod just to reduce your reload time, and because you'll be playing at range, the extra turret traverse speed won't impact you all that much. I did highlight the Torp Launcher mod on the key because it is unique to it, but you'd pretty much be doing a full meme build if you decided to choose it. Now it's time to compare some stats. First up is the loadout screen. The only thing that's different is the repair party, as the key's repair party will heal 29 more hit points per second more than the Amagi's. This equates to 2400 hit points over the course of 3 repair parties in a match, which isn't a massive difference, but isn't anything to sneeze at. However, we will wait to hand out a point for that until the next screen, which is survivability on the stat screen. The key has a big hit point advantage of 5900, and when combined with its repair party, that nets it the first point of the matchup for having a higher hit point pool. We're going to save the armor for the armor viewer, but before we leave this screen, the Amagi evens up the matchup right quick for having a much better torpedo belt, beating the key 43% to 25. Next up, we have everyone's favorite, the artillery screen. There's a lot to unpack here. At first glance, there's a lot of similarities due to the ships having the exact same main battery guns, and a lot of people incorrectly call them sister ships because of that. But as we've already seen, the hulls are quite different, which causes a lot of variance in their stats. Of note on this page, I kinda had trouble reducing the values of all these stats to their base values, so I had to use a secondary account to do so, and therefore the Amagi doesn't have its range upgrade yet, so that circled value in the lower left portion there should actually read 17.2 kilometers instead of 15.9, and I do apologize for that. Strangely, that and its reload time are slightly better than the keys, but not enough to call it a distinct advantage. Their turret rotations are the same, their high explosive shell damage is the same, their fire starting capabilities are the same, but curiously the key has 500 extra damage on its AP shells, which equates to a DPM of 10,000 more than the Amagi's. It sounds like a lot, and well, yeah, it is a fair amount, so let's give a point out to the key for AP DPM. Now for a very interesting tidbit on the screen, the secondaries. Long story short, the key has a higher DPM on its secondaries by about 46,000, but the Amagi has 16 guns that are of higher caliber, the 127mm. Compare that to the 16 100mm guns that the key has, and although it's going to be circumstantial, the Amagi will most likely end up with a better chance at penetrations, so we're going to call secondaries a tie. Next up is the torpedo screen. Well, this is kinda awkward. Only one of these ships has torps, and even though they're more of an emergency weapon, they're still an additional means of offense, so the key does get another point. Next up, we're going to take a look at the anti-aircraft defense screen. I did the math just in case, but it's pretty obvious here that the key also has much better AA. Specifically, it gets a point for better damage per second. Maneuvering on over to the maneuverability screen, I do like saying that, the Amagi barely has better speed and a better turning circle, but the differences are very negligible. However, the key has a quicker rudder shift time by more than 2 seconds, so that nets it yet another point. Oh boy, only a couple screens left. Come on, Amagi, you can do it. Make the comeback. Well, next up is the concealment screen. We probably could have just skipped this one. There's nothing to see here. Their superstructures would probably be visible from space, so let's move on to armor. I painstakingly crunched all the numbers and found that the Amagi has better overall armor than the key, especially its citadel. Man, the key citadel is extremely weak, especially on the deck. Von Parsifal should have no trouble citadeling a key if it can get past its insane AA defenses. The key citadel armor is so bad that I'm giving the Amagi 2 separate points here, one for better overall armor, and one for a much better protected citadel. But that is all she wrote, so let's move on to the summary. Well, the Amagi ends up with 3 points for a better torp reduction belt, better overall armor, and a better protected citadel. While the key gets 5 points for a bigger hit point pool, higher AP DPM, for having torps, for having better AA DPS, for having a quicker rudder, and although it doesn't affect gameplay, it does get an asterisk because it does have increased credit earnings being that it's a premium ship. Well, in closing, I don't know about you guys, but I was expecting this to be a much closer duel. Just like it said in the info, the key really is an improvement on the Amagi design, and Wargaming has made sure that this was reflected in stats of these ships. The Amagi still isn't a bad ship, and you may find that you can survive a little longer in it than the key, but the key does have more tools in its bag, and quite a few of them are of higher quality. So in the matchup of these two Tier 7 Japanese battleships, the key is the victor. Well, I hope you did enjoy that video. Thank you very much for watching. If you can, go ahead and hit that like button. If you want to see more of my videos, hit that subscribe button. Feel free to leave a comment down below. And as always, take care of yourself and do what makes you happy.